Most discipline is hidden discipline, designed not to liberate but to limit. Do not ask why. Be cautious with how. Why leads inexorably to paradox. How traps you in a universe of cause and effect. Both deny the infinite. Heretics of Dune is the fifth novel in Frank Herbert's original Dune series. The book follows the machinations of the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood as they encounter new powers within the old empire, the lost ones returning out of the Great Scattering. After the death of the worm god emperor approximately 1500 years ago, the Fish Speakers, his female military force, had taken control of the god emperor's enormous wealth of spice. They had squandered that tremendous wealth in petty squabbles and foolish actions, no single event significant enough to be recorded by history. Eventually, the tleilaxu, that fringe world at the edge of the empire who had produced countless Gholas for the god emperor, discovered a way to produce spice melange from within their Axlotl tanks. This pushed the Fish Speakers into an alliance with the Ixians. Control of Arrakis passed to the Priesthood, who led a new religion formed from the remnants of Leto's old design. They worshipped the god of the desert, Shai Hulud, each worm now containing a piece of the god emperor's consciousness. Still, the Bene Gesserit remained one of the most powerful forces in the empire, superior to the modern Fish Speaker Council, which had inherited the heart of the old Atreides Empire. They were superior to Chom by far, and equal to the Spacing Guild, though the guild's monopoly on space travel had long been broken by the Ixians, who had invented technology which allowed vessels to travel without the use of a guild navigator. The Bene Gesserit had always seen themselves as permanent revolutionaries. It was a revolution that had been dampened only in the time of the tyrant, Leto II. Dampened, but not diverted or stopped. Since the time of the God Emperor, the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood had purchased 12 Duncan Idaho Gholas from the tleilaxu. Up until this point, each one had been assassinated, they suspected by the tleilaxu themselves. Many in the Sisterhood feared this Ghola project. The Mother Superior Terraza knows there are heretics among them. The word heretic here referred to a private joke within the Sisterhood. They were supposed to follow the orders of the Mother Superior always, with absolute devotion. The sisters did do this, except when they disagreed. The most recent Duncan Idaho Ghola was sent to the planet Gamu to be trained. Gamu had once been known as Gedi Prime until the name was changed by Gurney Halleck. The Bene Gesserit keep on Gamu was watched over by the Reverend Mother Shuang Yu. Shuang Yu was a heretic. The older woman, like some others in the Sisterhood, believed the Ghola project to be ultimately dangerous to the Bene Gesserit. Those in her camp of thought believed that there was a chance that by meddling with the forces set in motion by the tyrant, they could make the same mistake as before, losing control of a Kwisatz Haderach. To meddle with the worm-bound remnants of the tyrant, that was dangerous in the extreme. Teraza does not trust Shuang Yu with the Ghola. She knows that Shuang Yu is in active opposition to the Ghola project and has underlying violent motives against Duncan. When the Ghola was 6, his military training on Gamu began. His instruction was given over to the hands of the Bashar Miles Teg. He was an Atreides descendant, born of a Bene Gesserit Reverend mother. Miles Teg's mother had also been a heretic, giving Teg secret knowledge he was not meant to possess. This Ghola project was extremely important to Mother Superior Teraza. She had summoned Miles Teg out of retirement, and as a man who had served the Sisterhood his entire life, he could not deny her. Except for his age, 296 standard years, Miles Teg was the spitting image of the original Duke Leto. This, of course, was part of the Bene Gesserit design. Teraza intended to use him to eventually awaken the Ghola's past memories, as Hate had done in the book Dune Messiah. This new Duncan Ghola had been altered by the tleilaxu, his reflexes and nerves modernized. The Sisterhood did not deny the possibility that the tleilaxu may have changed him in other ways as well. Still, the Bene Gesserit gave him the most careful Pranabindu training at all stages. When Duncan is around 10 years old, Reverend Mother Lucilla, an imprinter, is sent to train him at the keep on Gamu. Lucilla was obedient to Teraza. Her task would be to teach Duncan Idaho love in all forms. Lucilla was also of Atreides descent, of a particularly motherly line. As a descendant of Siona, she was immune to all forms of prescience. She was young, but had already produced 3 children for the Sisterhood. When she first speaks with Shuang Yu on Gamu, she can sense Shuang Yu's violent intent against the Ghola. The Jessica persona within her memories also can sense doom. "Surely no one believes this Ghola can become another Kwisatz Haderach," Lucilla objected. Shuang Yu merely shrugged. Lucilla held herself quite still, thinking, was it possible the Ghola could be transformed into a male version of a Reverend Mother? Could this Duncan Idaho learn to look inward where no Reverend Mother dared? On the planet Arrakis, formerly known as Arrakis, the Priesthood has made a discovery. A child of 8 named Shiana Brug, who has power over the great worms of the desert. When her village was attacked by a worm, killing everyone she knew, she encountered the creature, discovering her strange gift. Rage and wild desperation began to fill Shiana. Mindlessly, she raced down the dune toward Shaitan, coming up behind the worm as it turned back through the dry place where it had entered the village. Without a thought, she dashed along beside the tail, scrambled onto it, and ran forward along the great ridged back. At the hump behind its mouth, she crouched and beat her fist against the unyielding surface. The worm stopped. The worm had brought Shiana out of the desert and to the city of Keen, once called Arrakis. The Priesthood had seen her arrival. Worm riding had been outlawed by the Priesthood, but Shiana did not use maker hooks as did the Fremen of old. The worm carried her of its own volition. Some of the priests called Shiana the child of Shai Hulud. Some believed she should be punished for mounting Shai Hulud. All her life, Shiana had been taught to despise these priests, and why shouldn't she? They were the oppressive dictators of her planet. For days, the priests argued over the fate of Shiana, and finally they decided to test her. Normally, this test would be an execution in disguise. Those who displeased the priesthood would be dropped into the desert, a thumper would be placed, and a worm summoned. They would meet the judgment of God. 2 worms came for Shiana during the test, as the priest watched from thopters above her. "Go ahead, eat me, that's what they want." The priest overhead could not hear her words, but the gesture was visible, and they could see that she was talking to the 2 worms of God. The finger pointing up at them did not bode well. The worms did not move. Shiana lowered her hand. "You killed my mother, and father, and all my friends," she accused. She took a step forward and shook a fist at them. The worms retreated, keeping their distance. "If you don't want me, go back where you came from." She waved them away toward the desert. Obediently, they backed farther and turned in unison. Shiana's power over the great worms could no longer be doubted by anyone. She is brought to the temple of the priesthood, where she lives like royalty for 6 years, as the priests study her and her conversations with her father, the god of the desert. The high priest Tuic grows fond of the child, and even gives up his own bedchamber to her. Her every whim is sated. Any request, no matter how difficult, must be fulfilled for the holy child. The people of Arrakis eventually begin to worship Shiana, seeing her as a woman of the people. All the while, the Bene Gesserit have had their spies keeping a close watch on Shiana. They have plans for her. Leto II himself had predicted the coming of this child. "There is a female child named Shiana Brugh on Arrakis," Shuang-Yu said. "She can control the giant worms." Lucilla concealed her alertness. Giant worms. Not Shai Hulud. Not Shai Tan. Giant worms. The Sand Rider predicted by the tyrant had appeared at last. The Mother Superior Taraza has commanded Reverend Mother Darwi O'Drade to go to Arrakis to prepare Shiana for what must come. O'Drade was also an Atreides descendant, strikingly similar in appearance to her cousin Lucilla. O'Drade was more similar in age to Taraza, however. The two of them had bonded at a young age while at the Bene Gesserit schools. Out of necessity, O'Drade was hidden as a child. Her mother had made the mistake of being recognized while breeding, and O'Drade was kept with a man and woman who acted as her true parents, until one day, the Sisterhood came for her. The memory of that day still haunted O'Drade. When the Reverend Mothers came, the foster mother had not fought the removal of her child. 2 Reverend Mothers came with a contingent of male and female proctors. Afterward, O'Drade was a long time understanding the significance of that wrenching moment. The woman had known in her heart that the day of parting would come, only a matter of time. Still, as the days became years, almost 6 standard of years, the woman had dared to hope. Then, the Reverend Mothers came with their burly attendants. They had merely been waiting until it was safe, until they were sure no hunters knew this was a Bene Gesserit planned Atreides scion. O'Drade saw a great deal of money pass to the foster mother. The woman threw the money on the floor, but no voice was raised in objection. The adults in the scene knew where the power lay. Calling up those compressed emotions, O'Drade could still see the woman take herself to a straight-backed chair beside the window onto the street, there to hug herself and rock back and forth. Not a sound from her. The Reverend Mothers used voice and their considerable wiles, plus the smoke of drugging herbs and their overpowering presence to lure O'Drade into their waiting ground car. "It will be just for a little while. Your real mother sent us." O'Drade sensed the lies, but curiosity compelled. "My real mother." Her last view of the woman who had been her only known female parent was of that figure at the window, rocking back and forth, a look of misery on her face, arms wrapped around herself. O'Drade was taught later by the Sisterhood to remember that woman's pain. It was her love for O'Drade that caused her that misery. The Sisterhood understood that love was one of the most dangerous forces in the universe and was best avoided. Thousands of years ago, the Lady Jessica's love for Duke Leto had led to 4,000 years of subjugation under the tyrant. O'Drade decided early on that she must not love this child Shiana. Love would weaken her. O'Drade possessed the Atreides' wild talent, Taraza knew. Prescience. Prescience made the Mother Superior uncomfortable. 2 of Odraid's 19 offspring produced for the Sisterhood had been quietly put to death. They had been abominations, pre-born like the tyrant and his sister Ghanima had been, as Muad'Dib's sister Aliyah had been. On Gamu, Duncan, now 15, is nearing the appropriate age for Lucilla's final imprintation, sexual imprintation. Throughout his years on Gamu, he had been given access to all the knowledge of the Sisterhood. Only knowledge of the Arcana was forbidden to him. When he had learned of the God Emperor, he had wondered what had driven a man to do such a thing. He wishes that he could have served the God Emperor in his time. Duncan had grown to hate the Reverend Mother Shuang Yu. He could sense her lies and manipulation. He resented the Sisterhood now, but loved Lucilla, just as the Mother Superior Teraza had intended. One day, as Duncan is training, a tleilaxu face dancer disguised as Miles Teg attacks Duncan and Lucilla. After defeating the face dancer, Bashar Mentat Miles Teg quickly discerns that Shuang Yu must be involved in the attack. They are no longer safe at the Bene Gesserit keep on Gamu. The 3 of them flee into the wilderness, along with the Bashar's longtime trusted aide, Partran, a native of Gamu. Partran leaves them to create a diversion and is killed by Shuang Yu. Partran, however, had given Miles Teg directions to a secret place he had discovered many years ago as a young man, an ancient Harkonnen no-globe. There they could hide from those who would seek them out. For 4 nights, Teg leads them through the forest of Gamu, knowing that Shuang Yu would not expect them to walk. He must do the unexpected, as the Mother Superior Teraza had commanded. According to he and Partran's plan, everything would indicate that they went through the wilderness and escaped the planet on a no-ship. The ancient no-globe they arrived at was still functioning. There was water and food. Miles knows that he must protect the Ghola. He comes to the decision that he will awaken the Ghola's memories before Lucilla can complete the final imprintation upon him. This was the only way, according to his Mentat projections, that Duncan's safety and sanity would remain intact. Teg knows it will be no easy thing to thwart a full Reverend Mother. On Arrakis, the temple is attacked, and Shiana is nearly killed by a hunter-seeker. The Bene Gesserit spy Kapuna dies, saving the now 14-year-old girl. The use of Shigawire during the attack indicated Ixian involvement, and the Sisterhood intended to punish the Guild, the tleilaxu, and the Ixians for their respective roles in the attack. Shiana is taken into Odraid's care. When Odraid becomes aware of the fact that the High Priest's men are spying, she has them killed swiftly. An agreement is made, and it is decided that Shiana will be brought to a place removed from the Bene Gesserit keep on Arrakis and from the priest's temple. They take Shiana to a place in the city of Keen. The place was once a fish speaker center in the days of the God Emperor. It was a comfortable building cooled by Ixian machinery. Odraid allowed the priest to have representatives in the building, but Reverend Mothers walked the halls, and the priest would not intrude where Odraid did not allow, and Shiana would meet them only as she allowed. Shiana takes to Odraid immediately, sensing her power, eager for all that she can learn from the Reverend Mother.
"We have been a long time waiting for you," Odraid said. "We will not give those fools another opportunity to lose you."
The Society of the Bene TLEILAX is divided into 2 classes, Face Dancers and the Masters. No one from off-world had ever reported seeing a tleilaxu female. Face Dancers were supposedly sterile mules, submissive to their masters. In this time, tleilaxu have developed a new kind of face dancer. They were almost undetectable. They could absorb the memories as well as the form and persona of a person. They had already placed some of these new face dancers within the ranks of the Ixians and the fish speakers. The tleilaxu were now the only secure source of spice melange for the guild, now that they could produce it in their axolotl tanks. For every milligram of spice harvested on Arrakis, the Bene TLEILAX produced tons. Waf was the master of masters. He had been brought back countless times. Since before the time of Paul Atreides, the tleilaxu had maintained the myth of their own incompetence and malevolence. The Empire had named them Dirty Tleilaxu.
"We are the people of the Yakist,"
he had reminded his counselors only last night.
"All else is frontier. We have fostered the myth of our own weakness and evil practices for these millennia with only one purpose. Even the Bene Gesserit believe."
The tleilaxu held a great belief based on Zinsunism and Sufism. They were extremely pious and extraordinarily xenophobic. No outsider, or Pawinda as they called them, was allowed on the planet. They believed that Leto II had not been God, but the prophet of God. Waff meets with an honored matre aboard a no-ship. Descendants of tleilaxu from the Scattering have warned him that these matres born out of the Scattering had the powers of the Bene Gesserit witches, and worse. The orange-eyed honored matre demanded total subservience of the tleilaxu. Using concealed weapons, Waff kills the matre, and she and her companions are replaced with face dancers. He decides that the no-ship must disappear. There can be no evidence that the ship ever made it to TLEILAX. The retribution of the matres could be great. After some time inside the Harkonnen no-chamber on Gamu, Miles Teg decides that it is time to awaken the Ghola's memories, as the Mother Superior had commanded. The young Duncan was eager to know more about his past life. 8 days had gone by in the no-globe. Duncan reacts negatively to the Harkonnen decor of the place, but does not understand why. He hated everything about the place. Teg was attempting to keep Duncan from being alone with Lucilla, which Duncan noticed. Lucilla wonders if the tyrant knew, through prescience, that they would one day need this place. When they had first entered the no-globe, they found 21 skeletons, the ones who had built this place, killed by the Harkonnens to preserve the secrets. Teg tells Duncan that he has been preparing him for the intense pain necessary to restore his memories. Duncan greatly desires to gain past memories, but it was a thing he also feared. He had discovered that he was a Ghola years ago at the Bene Gesserit keep on Gamu. The library provided the child with the most basic details.
Gholas, humans grown from a cadaver's cells in tleilaxu axolotl tanks. Axolotl tanks?
A tleilaxu device for reproducing a living human being from the cells of a cadaver.
Describe a Ghola, he demanded. Innocent flesh devoid of its original memories. See axolotl tanks.
Duncan had learned to read the silences, the blank places in what the people of the keep revealed to him. Revelation swept over him. He knew. Only 10, and he knew. I am a Ghola. Late afternoon in the library, all of the esoteric machinery around him faded into a sensory background, and a 10-year-old sat silently before a scanner, hugging the knowledge to himself. I am a Ghola. Teg knew that he must create mental and physical agony within Duncan as instructed by the Sisterhood. He finds what he must do to be distasteful, which he tells Duncan. The Bene Gesserit had told him the way. Teg's right hand shot out in a swift arc. The open palm cracked against Duncan's cheek. How dare you disobey me? Left hand out, another rocking slap. How dare you? Teg experienced an initial moment of shock at the speed with which the young Duncan reacted to his attacks. Teg continued to create deeper and deeper pain for Duncan, each time making sure Duncan saw his face at the instant of greatest agony. Finally, Duncan called out, Damn you, Leto! Teg knew it was done. Duncan's mind is flooded with new awareness. He even remembers his own death on Arrakis. His gaze remained on Teg. Did I buy Paul enough time to escape? Answer all of his questions truthfully. He escaped. Now came the testing moment. Where had the tleilaxu acquired the Idaho cells? The Sisterhood's test said they were original, but suspicions remained. The tleilaxu had done something of their own to this Ghola. His memories could be a valuable clue to that thing. But the Harkonnens, Duncan said. His memory from the keep meshed. Oh yes. Oh yes. A fierce laugh shook him. He sent a roaring victory shout at the long-dead Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. I paid you back, Baron. Oh, I did it to you for all the ones you destroyed. Miles Tegg tells Duncan that the Sisterhood has need of him. Lucilla appears and sees that Duncan's memories are awakened. Tegg knew that she had intended to imprint the Ghola before the awakening of his memories. She threatens Miles Tegg, saying that he better not have complicated her task of imprinting. Duncan finally realizes what the imprinting is. The Bene Gesserit intended to use him as a breeding stud, he thought. He would not allow it. Duncan sensed his own violent thoughts towards Lucilla. In his mind's eye, he could see her covered in blood. In that moment, he understood that the tleilaxu had done something to him. They had altered him in some way. The tleilaxu have done something to me. Something that has not yet been exposed, Duncan husked. Exactly what we feared. It was Lucilla speaking from the doorway, behind Tegg. She advanced within 2 paces of Duncan. I have been listening. You two are very informative. What have the tleilaxu done to you? She demanded. Duncan spoke with a flippancy that he did not feel. Oh, great imprinter, if I knew I would tell you. Lucilla knows that Tegg has greatly complicated her task, but she was no longer uncomfortable with the imprintation of someone so young. Duncan was no longer a boy, but a man with adult memories. Later she attempts to complete the process, but Duncan has made a judgment about the Sisterhood now. He rejects her. Lucilla, if you touch me again without my permission, I will try to kill you. I will try so hard that you will very likely have to kill me. She recoiled. He stared into her eyes. I am not some damn stud for you witches. Is that what you think we want of you? Nobody has said what you want of me, but your actions are obvious. He stood poised on the balls of his feet. The unawakened thing within him stirred and sent his pulse racing. Lucilla knows that he is serious. Lucilla is concerned that she may not be able to complete her task given to her by the Mother Superior Taraza. The Bene Gesserit had delivered their standard messages to the Guild, Ix, and the tleilaxu for their roles in the attack on Arrakis. You will be punished. Mother Superior Taraza has decided to meet with the tleilaxu Master Waff aboard a Guild vessel. Speculating, Taraza tells Waff that he will not be able to deal with her the way he had dealt with the honored matres earlier. Taraza claims that the Sisterhood had intercepted the missing matre ship containing the face dancers. It is a lie, but he believes it. He is shocked. In his mind he curses her and all the damnable Bene Gesserit witches. He recognized her power. Waff did not try to delude himself about Taraza. This woman was far more dangerous than any honored matre. If he killed Taraza, she would be replaced immediately by someone just as dangerous, someone with every essential piece of information possessed by the present Mother Superior. We find your new face dancers very interesting, Taraza said. Waff grimaced involuntarily. Yes, far more dangerous than the honored matres, who were not yet even blaming the tleilaxu for the loss of an entire no-ship. Waff wishes that he could do away with Taraza and the entire Sisterhood. Sensing potential violence in him, Taraza makes a guess. She claims that she knows about his concealed weapons, and his response demonstrated the truth of her guess. Waff wonders again if telepathy was among the many powers of Bene Gesserit Reverend Mothers. She tells him that in exchange for Bene Gesserit access to their Axlotl tanks, the Sisterhood will offer Atreides breeding mothers, though she would never give them true Atreides, only close mimics. Taraza also discerns something critical from analyzing Waff's speech patterns. She realizes that the tleilaxu great belief was based in Zensunniism and Sufism. She knows now that the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood can manipulate the tleilaxu through use of the Missionara Protectiva. Taraza offers Waf an opportunity to experience the land of his prophet, inviting him to the Bene Gesserit keep on Arrakis. She will use him as bait in her scheme. The significant fact is this: no Bene TLEILAX female has ever been seen away from the protection of their core planets. Face dancer mules who simulate females do not count in this analysis. They cannot be breeders. The tleilaxu sequester their females to keep them from our hands. This is our primary deduction. It must also be in the eggs that the tleilaxu masters conceal their most essential secrets. Bene Gesserit analysis, archive number XOXTM99014. Back on Arrakis, Odrade awaits the arrival of the tleilaxu master Waf. She plans to take Shiana along with Waf into the desert when he arrived. Thanks to Taraza's new discovery regarding the roots of the tleilaxu great belief, she knew how to trap the tleilaxu. They would go deep into the sands beyond watchful eyes, and she would manipulate him by use of the Missionara Protectiva. She would force Waf to have a religious experience. The chance to observe a tleilaxu master in a religious setting would be invaluable. Once Waf arrives on Arrakis, he attempts to spy upon Odrade with the help of High Priest Tuik as they discuss the Holy Child Shiana. Tuik had allowed the tleilaxu master to listen because he told him he would help get Shiana back. Odrade tells Tuik that because of the attack, she had sent for Miles Tag to reinforce Rakian planetary defenses. Tuik believes the Bene Gesserit mean to wrestle control of the planet from him. Though Tuik had believed that Odrade didn't know about the tleilaxu listening, she in fact was aware. Odrade demands the secret listener Waf to be invited to sit with them. Waf was not supposed to bring face dancers to Arrakis, but he brought two anyway. Odrade did not allow them into the room. Odrade noticed that Waf concealed weapons beneath his sleeves. She detected secret motives in Waf and comes to the realization that Waf aimed to substitute a face dancer for High Priest Tuik.
"My Lord Tuik," Odrade said, "this tleilaxu intends to murder us both."
Waf attacks, and Odrade breaks both of his arms in two quick motions, but not before one of his darts fires, killing Tuik instantly. Waf had never expected that there would be such speed and power in her attacks. The two face dancers burst into the room, but Waf commands them to leave when Odrade threatens to end him. Rendering him unconscious, she sets his broken arms. She tells him that her sisters have been listening and that he was now her ally. She uses what she had learned from Taraza about the tleilaxu Zensunni beliefs and manipulates him into agreeing to an alliance, making him feel as though no tleilaxu plot remains hidden from the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood.
"A monopoly would force the guild to buy more Ixian navigation machines," she said. "You would have the guild in the jaws of your crusher."
Waf lifted his head to glare at her. The movement sent agony through his broken arms and he groaned. Despite the pain, he studied Odrade through almost lidded eyes. Did the witches really believe that was the extent of the tleilaxu plan? He hardly dared hope the Bene Gesserit were so misled.
"Of course, that was not your basic plan," Odrade said.
Waf's eyes snapped wide open.
She was reading his mind. "I am dishonored," he said. "When you saved my life, you saved a useless thing."
He sank back. Odrade inhaled a deep breath. Time to use the results of the chapter house analysis. She leaned close to Waf and whispered in his ear.
"The Shariat needs you yet."
Waf gasped. Odrade sat back. That gasp said it all. Analysis confirmed. The Bene Gesserit had always used religion to manipulate and control. The tleilaxu master was no different from the rest. The planet Chapter House had been occupied by the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood for 1400 years. and even then they only thought of it as a temporary planet. It was a secret world, but of course there was always the risk of accidental discovery. Taraza, on Chapter House, wonders where Miles Teg and the Ghola could be. She had instructed the Bashar to act unpredictably, but she had not expected this. She has already asked the tleilaxu to prepare a new Ghola, just as a precaution in case the current one was dead. Taraza is conscious of the fact that the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood could be swallowed up by the honored Matres. The Matres had not returned out of the scattering because of curiosity, but out of dreams of conquest, and they had begun their conquest. The Bene Gesserit keep on Gamu had been attacked. Shuang Yu had been killed, but not before she left a message to her sisters. "Shuang Yu left you a message that only we might read." "And the wear marks on the furniture?" "Yes, Mother Superior, and then she knew she would be attacked and had time to leave a message. I saw your earlier report on the devastation of the attack. It was quick and totally overpowering. The attackers did not try to take captives." "What did she say?" "Whores." The Bene Gesserit referred to the Matres as such for a simple reason. They believed that the Matres made a mockery of the Sisterhood, copying them yet selling themselves for power. The Matres did not have mastery of Melange. They used an inadequate substance which turned their eyes orange instead of the characteristic blue within blue which marked spice addiction. These Matres gained power through sexual enslavement. They aped some of the Bene Gesserit ways, but possessed none of their deeper awareness, and yet they dared place themselves at the center of worship. Taraza clearly understood Shuang Yu's message. The Matres had acted. The ones out of the scattering sought the Bene Gesserit elders' secrets lost to them during their time away from the old empire. Taraza commands Burzmali, who was trained by Teg, to go to Gamu in search of Miles Teg and the Ghola with as many resources as he needs. She suspects that the Ghola never left the planet. Back on Arrakis, Odrade continues with the plan, though she wonders why the Ghola is not yet on the planet. She takes Shiana and Waf to Dar es Balat, the place where Leto's no room had been found. They go into the desert to find a worm. Odrade intends to force Waf into a religious experience and observe him. Shiana begins dancing, summoning Shaitan. Odrade looks into the distance and feels the coming of a vision, a warning. She realizes that she is looking at the place where the one god was divided. The place where Leto II had fallen into the Idaho River 1,500 years ago. She wonders if the heretics of the Sisterhood had been correct. What would come out of them meddling in the remnants of the tyrant's work? As the worm approaches, Odrade resigns herself to whatever fate is to come. Waf is overcome with religious exultation. A sibilant hiss, subterranean and muted by sand. It became louder with shocking swiftness. There was heat in it, a noticeable warming of the breeze that twisted down their rocky avenue. The hissing swelled to a crescendo roar. Abruptly, the crystal-ringed gaping of a gigantic mouth lifted over the dune directly above Shiana. "Shaitan!" Shiana screamed, not breaking the rhythm of her dance. "Here I am, Shaitan!" As it crested the dune, the worm dipped its mouth downward toward Shiana. Sand cascaded around her feet, forcing her to stop her dance. The smell of cinnamon filled the rocky defile. The worm stopped above them. "Messenger of God," Waf breathed. Heat dried the perspiration on Odrade's exposed face and made the automatic insulation of her still suit puff outward perceptibly. She inhaled deeply, sorting the components behind that cinnamon assault. Daintily, like a child on unfamiliar ground, the worm once more moved forward. It slid across the dune crest, curled itself down onto the exposed rock, and presented its burning mouth slightly above and about 2 paces from Shiana. As it stopped, Odrade became conscious of the deep furnace rumbling of the worm. She could not tear her gaze away from the reflections of lambent orange flames within the creature. It was a cave of mysterious fire. Odrade could see that Shiana commanded the worm, but she could also see that it was not the girl's words that moved the creature, but something else. Waff came up beside Odrade, his trance-like gaze fixed on the worm. "I am here," he whispered. Odrade silently cursed him. Any unwarranted noise could attract this beast onto them. She knew what Waff was thinking, though. No other tleilaxu had ever stood this close to a descendant of his prophet. Not even the Rakian priest had ever done this. With her right hand, Shiana made a sudden downward gesture. "Down to us, Shaitan," she said. The worm lowered its gaping mouth until the internal fire pit filled the rocky defile in front of them. Her voice little more than a whisper, Shiana said, "See how Shaitan obeys me, mother?" Odrade could feel Shiana's control over the worm, a pulse of hidden language between the child and monster. It was uncanny. Though Odrade is annoyed by Waff, she knew that never before had one of the Bene Gesserit had an opportunity to study a tleilaxu master religiously. The insight she was gathering was highly valuable. The three of them mount the worm, and Shaitan moves. Though Shiana had commanded the creature, she had only been allowed to ride a worm once before. The day Shai Hulud brought her to the city of Keen years ago. Now the worm moved again of its own accord, towards that place of Odrade's vision. Members of the Priesthood and the Bene Gesserit followed behind in thopters. Eventually, the worm did stop, and when they dismounted, it merely returned into the sands the way it had came. The immortal hand of the God Emperor still moved those creatures in the sand. It had come to this place of its own free will, drawn back toward the place where Leto's endless dream had begun. The three of them end up falling deep into a sand slope. It is only then that Odrade realizes the place. They had fallen into an ancient Fremen water storage basin. They were in Siege Tabor, Stilgar's place during the time of Paul Atreides, the place where Leto II had hidden his spice hoard. The place had long since been cleaned out. Odrade believes that she is the one being brought here for a purpose. Using her knowledge of the Missionara Protectiva, she manipulates Waff into staying behind while she explores the place. She gives Shiana instruction to keep an eye on him. Odrade can still sense the warning from her other memories. She finds several desert mummified bodies that had been stabbed to death in what looked like ritual killings. She knew that the bodies could not be from the Fremen times. They were from the famine times, and made her fearful. Odrade could still smell the residue of melange in the place, and wanted to turn back, but something compelled her forward. She finds a word carved on the floor. Arafel. She knows the meaning. The cloud darkness at the end of the universe. She realizes that the God Emperor had reached out of the past to send her a message. Written in ancient Chicopsa, she finds the word here. It leads her to a trap door. Inside, Odrade discovers a great treasure of melange, 90,000 long tons. It was half a year's harvest on the entire planet of Arrakis, geniusly hidden and left there by Leto II for her to find. Written on the walls in the ancient Atreides language were the words of the God Emperor. A reverend mother will read my words. Something cold settled in Odrade's guts. She moved to her right with the light plowing through an empire's ransom in Melange. There was more to the message. I bequeath to you my fear and loneliness. To you I give the certainty that the body and soul of the Bene Gesserit will meet the same fate as all other bodies and all other souls. Another paragraph of the message beckoned to the right of this one. She plowed through the clawing melange and stopped to read. What is survival if you do not survive whole? Ask the Bene TLEILAX that.
What if you no longer hear the music of life? Memories are not enough unless they call you to noble purpose.
There was more of it on the narrow end wall of the long chamber. Odrade stumbled through the melange and knelt to read.
Why did your sisterhood not build the golden path? You knew the necessity. Your failure condemned me, the God Emperor, to millennia of personal despair.
The words God Emperor were not written in Jacobsa, but in the language of the Islamiyat, where they conveyed an explicit second meaning to any speaker of that tongue. Your God and your Emperor because you made me so. Odrade smiled grimly. That would drive Waff into a religious frenzy. The higher he went, the easier to shatter his security. She did not doubt the accuracy of the tyrant's accusation, nor the potential in his prediction that the sisterhood could end. The sense of danger had led her to this place unerringly. Something more had been at work too. The worms of Arrakis still moved to the tyrant's ancient beat. He might slumber in his endless dream, but monstrous life, a pearl in each worm to remind it, carried on as the tyrant had predicted. What was it he had told the sisterhood in his own time? She recalled his words.
When I am gone, they must call me Shaitan, Emperor of Gehenna. The wheel must turn and turn along the golden path.
Yes, that was what Taraza had meant. But don't you see? The common people of Arrakis have been calling him Shaitan for more than 1,000 years. So Taraza had known this thing. Without ever seeing these words, she had known. I see your design, Taraza, and I know the burden of fear you have carried all these years. I can feel it every bit as deeply as you do. Odrade knew then that this warning sense would not leave until she ended, or the sisterhood vanished from existence, or the peril was resolved. Odrade lifted her light, got to her feet, and slogged through the melange to the wide steps out of this place. At the steps she recoiled. More of the tyrant's words had been cut into each riser. Trembling, she read them as she moved upward to the opening.
My words are your past. My questions are simple. With whom do you ally? With the self-idolators of TLEILAX? With my fish-speaker bureaucracy? With the Cosmos Wandering Guild? With the Harkonnen blood sacrificers? With a dogmatic sink of your own creation? How will you meet your end? As no more than a secret society?
Odrade climbed past the questions, reading them a second time as she went. Noble purpose. What a fragile thing that always was, and how easily distorted. But the power was there immersed in constant peril. It was all spelled out on the walls and stairs of that chamber. Taraza knew without having it explained. The tyrant's meaning was clear. Join me. As she emerged into the small room, finding a narrow ledge along which she could swing herself to the door, Odrade looked down at the treasure she had found. She shook her head in wonder at Taraza's wisdom. So that was how the sisterhood might end. Taraza's design was clear. All the pieces in place. Nothing certain. Wealth and power. It was all the same in the end. The noble design had been started, and it must be completed. Even if that meant the death of the sisterhood. What poor tools we have chosen. That girl waiting back there in the deep chamber below the desert. That girl and the Ghola being prepared on Arrakis. I speak your language now, old worm. It has no words, but I know the heart of it. Odrade saw Leto's message as a warning and an invitation. The sisterhood may end. She wonders at the purpose of the Bene Gesserit. Was survival a sufficient enough purpose? Odrade knows that she must act on her own. They travel to the Bene Gesserit sanctuary on Arrakis, and Odrade reveals secret knowledge to Waff. The Sisterhood planned to plant the worms of Arrakis on countless planets of the Scattering. He thought it was a lie, and she had intended him to, though it was true. He asked for the real reason for dissension among the Bene Gesserit ranks, and she tells him that some fear that they may birth another Kwisatz Haderach. Odrade manages to refocus Waff's doubts about the Sisterhood onto the people of the Scattering. She manipulates him into agreeing to alliance, one she knows that many in the Sisterhood will not like.
Our survival in the face of the storm that is brewing among the scattered ones, she said. The tleilaxu survival too. The farthest thing from our desires is an end to those who preserve the great belief.
Waff felt a tight band release itself from his breast.
The unexpected, the unthinkable, the unbelievable was true. The Bene Gesserit were not Pawinda.
All the universe would yet follow the Bene TLEILAX into the true faith. God would not permit otherwise, especially not here on the planet of the Prophet. The effectiveness of the Bene Gesserit Missionara Protectiva had proven itself again. Back on Gamu, Miles Teg has made contact with Burzmali. They have arranged a rendezvous. It is snowing when they finally leave the No Globe, heavily armed. Lucilla carried only a single lasgun with one burst. The Bene Gesserit believed that it diminished them to go into battle with much more than their skills. Now that they were outside of the No Globe, they could be detected by life scanners. They could hear the sounds of battle in the distance. The ground rumbled. They could hear shouting and voices in the distance. Teg recognized face dancers. He tells Lucilla and Duncan to run. The attackers advanced on him. He fired at them, but they did not fire back. He realized that they wanted him alive. The tleilaxu could expend any number of face dancers to run down his lasgun's charge. He attempts to run, but he is stunned and captured. Lucilla and Duncan make it to an armored ground car. Burzmali leads them out of the car and puts a life blanket on them to hide them from detection. They are led by Burzmali's men through the wilderness through a cleft and into an enclosed passage cut into the rocks. Thick algae grew on the ceiling and the walls of the place. It was specially grown algae that disrupted life scanners. The face dancer Sorifa tells Lucilla that she was bred and trained to kill the matres. Lucilla trades places with the face dancer to throw off the searchers. She will disguise herself as an honored matre. Duncan is disguised as a tleilaxu, and the two of them split up, taking different paths. When Miles Teg wakes, he encounters three strange figures. They put a device known as a T-probe on his head, a device from the Scattering. The pain it caused him was exquisite as they attempted to penetrate his mind. He wonders if there is a greater pain. He wonders if this is what the spice agony feels like for Reverend Mothers. The captors continue to increase the pain even more, and then suddenly, stillness. Miles Teg wonders if he is dead, but he is not. The device takes over his flesh, and he feels as though another person is sharing his body. It was reading his senses, trying to block his awareness. It was copying him. Teg attempts to counter the probe using his mentat powers, blocking it from copying his memories, but it would have everything else. Teg centered his focus on the movements of the probe. He found that he could anticipate it now, as if he was growing some new muscle. His captors wonder why they cannot read his mind, and then he forces his eyes open. From his perspective, the three are moving in ultra-slow motion. In the time of several eye blinks, Teg escapes from confinement, killing his captors with supreme bloody ease. He had predicted their every move. Using his mentat abilities, Teg determines that the agony of the probe had lifted him to some new level of ability. Hidden powers that had been awaiting within him had been unlocked out of necessity, taking the form of this strange new kind of prescience. Slowly he felt himself return to a normal sense of time. He escaped to the outside. He knew the place. He was in the city of Yesai. He was free. On the Bene Gesserit secret planet chapter house, Some sisters are calling for Odrade's death after what she did on Arrakis. The Bene Gesserit were still wary of the Atreides' flaws. They did not fully trust their hunger for power, which was evident by their history. The heretics of the Sisterhood believed that the Sisterhood was playing directly into the hands of the tleilaxu, who made this Duncan Ghola for their own purposes. They believed that they will be forced to serve the tleilaxu design, which would be worse than the time of the tyrant. They would be vulnerable, and perhaps even further, considering Leto's message. Perhaps the Ghola project had never been truly theirs from the start, but instead something that was set in motion by Leto II himself. Leto's message in Siege to Bur worries Taraza. She wonders if the Sisterhood is to end now, crushed by invaders from the Scattering. Taraza decides that she must go to Arrakis, and she may have to do what the others want: kill Odrade. On Gamu, Teg went to appear before an honored matre as the Bene Gesserit Bashar. He knew there was danger in the place. Teg deduces that the place is a bank. The honored matre that he met was old. Teg had not expected her age. She tells him that if he ever sees her eyes fully orange, then that means that he has offended her beyond her ability to tolerate. She tells Teg the Bene Gesserit are no match for the matres.
"I'm sure you understand this kind of power generally, Bashar," she said. "The Bene Gesserit trained you well. They are quite talented, but not, I fear, as talented as we are."
The old matre summons the matre who is meant to mark Teg. Teg sensed the danger. He determines that he must use his new talents. Teg becomes the whirlwind. He was a monstrous threat. He made his way through the complex as a blurred sweep, slaughtering everyone he met as blood sloshed around him. Doing so required minimal mental effort. Blood splattered him as he drove himself through the headquarters building, slaughtering everyone he met. As he had learned from the Bene Gesserit teachers, the great problem of the human universe lay in how you managed procreation. He could hear the voice of his first teacher as he carried destruction through the building. "You may think of this only as sexuality, but we prefer the more basic term, procreation. It has many facets and offshoots. It has apparently unlimited energy. The emotion called love is only one small aspect." Teg crushed the throat of a man standing rigidly in his path, and at last found the control room for the building's defenses. Teg knows that this transformation had something to do with his Atreides blood. As he ran toward an alley, the people he passed seemed as still as statues. He examined himself and could see that his blood was black. That moment of ultimate pain and crisis had forced him into a new domain of human potential, the God Emperor's design. He now possessed a double vision, a strange prescience. Teg realized that he could also sense the positions of no ships, and decides that he will capture one. His double vision provided him with the path. Lucilla and Burzmali head to the safe place to rendezvous with Duncan. There they encounter a young woman, and Lucilla immediately knows that something is off about her. The woman, named Merbella, is an honored matre. She attempts to kill Burzmali after he tries to slap her. She assumed that Lucilla is a great honored matre because of her clothing and because of the ease in which Lucilla subdues her. Merbella tells Lucilla that she has subdued Duncan and that she intends to complete the sexual enslavement of him. During the process, however, Duncan gains access to the memories of all the other Duncan Idahos. He is crushed by the memories. He can see his deaths, all of them. He remembers the Axlotl tanks, the gross, living female flesh, the tleilaxu design. The hidden thing in him awakens, the secret to destroying the matres. He overwhelms Merbella, forcing her to lose control of her own responses. Merbella realizes who Duncan is. The matres were warned of a Ghola possessing of forbidden knowledge gifted by the tleilaxu. She wanted to kill him, but she could not. Lucilla had watched from another room. When she comes in, Merbella begs her to kill Duncan, but Lucilla says that Duncan will go to Arrakis. On Arrakis, Teraza tells Odrade that the preservation of the Sisterhood is the only important thing. Odrade tells Teraza that the tleilaxu give the appearance of full cooperation, but something is disturbing her. She wonders if their Axlotl tanks are truly tanks. She suggests to Teraza that they could be surrogates, living organisms, the remnants of the tleilaxu females. No one had ever seen a tleilaxu female. It was monstrous. Odrade tells the Mother Superior what she has learned of the matres from the tleilaxu. They had surpassed the sexual skills of Bene Gesserit imprinters such as Lucilla, but the honored matres employ their skills in a manner that is ultimately fatal to themselves and others. Odrade suggests that the change that the tleilaxu had made to the Duncan Idaho Ghola was to make him the equivalent of a male honored matre. That's why the honored matres attacked their keep on Gamu, believing the Ghola was there. Teraza realized that they did not know what this Ghola was, and now that he had been reawakened, he was unpredictable. The sequencing of the Ghola's education became shambles even before they escaped from the Gamu keep. He leaped ahead of his teachers to grasp things that were only implied, and he did this at an alarmingly accelerated rate. Who knows what he has become by now? The tleilaxu meddled with the forces that had produced their Kwisatz Haderach, and led to 3,500 years of subjugation under the tyrant. After meeting Shiana, Teraza determines that Shiana will be loyal in exchange for Bene Gesserit teachings. Teraza had been intrigued by the young girl, and Shiana recognized the power of the Mother Superior. "I am informed that you may become one of us," Teraza said. Both women could see the effect of this on the girl. By now, Shiana was more fully aware of a Reverend Mother's accomplishments. The powerful beam of truth had been focused on her. She had begun to grasp at the enormous body of knowledge the Sisterhood had accumulated over the millennia. She had been told about selective memory transmission, about the workings of other memories, about the spice agony. And here before her stood the most powerful of all Reverend Mothers, one from whom nothing was hidden. Teraza and Odrade believed that one day Shiana could become a Mother Superior of extraordinary ability. Teraza, Odrade, and Shiana, and the Bene Gesserit company, along with Waf and the High Priest Tuik, who had been replaced by a face dancer after he was killed, convene at Dar es Balat. It is a tense gathering. Teraza sensed a danger of violence. In the meeting, it appears that the false Tuik had convinced himself that he is actually Tuik. Waf is surprised by this and cannot control him. Never before had he seen a face dancer behave in this way. It was the Bene Gesserit plot. This false Tuik was now a creature of the Sisterhood and remembered nothing of his face dancer origins. The tleilaxu had designed these new face dancers too well. One could only imagine what was happening with the face dancers the tleilaxu had implanted among the fish speakers and the Ixians. Waf was greatly intimidated by Teraza. Teraza tells Waf that they will serve the tleilaxu, but they will never become Axlotl tanks. Waf was shocked. The Sisterhood knew even the secret of the tleilaxu Axlotl tanks. Waf attempted to signal his face dancers to attack, but Teraza stops him, assuring him that the tleilaxu will fall if he does not agree. Waf ground his teeth. What was she doing? He entertained the mad thought that the Sisterhood had clogged his mind with some secret drug in the air. They knew things denied to others. He stared from Teraza to Odrade and back to Teraza. He knew he was old with serial Ghola resurrections, but not old in the way of the Bene Gesserit. These people were old. They seldom looked old, but they were old. Old beyond anything he dared imagine. Waf has no choice but to accept. Odrade tells Shiana that the honored matres will come to Arrakis. They had returned from the scattering because they see the old empire as an easy conquest. At the penthouse at Dar es Balat, the honored matres attack. Teraza sees the beam from the Thopter and recognizes that her own death is imminent. The beam severs both of her legs, but she manages to cut off the blood flow from her wounds. She reminds herself that the pain was not as great as the spice agony. She thinks to herself, I have won. Odrade comes to Taraza as she lies dying. Placing their foreheads together, they share memories. Odrade is now the Mother Superior. Odrade and Shiana head towards the No Room. Sometime later, Teg's stolen No ship arrives on Arrakis. He has arranged to meet Shiana and Odrade in the desert. They will arrive upon the back of a worm. Teg meets with Lucilla aboard the No ship and tells her that they are there to pick up Odrade, Shiana, and a worm. He tells her that he and his people will remain to create a diversion. He knew that the honored Matres would destroy Arrakis when they learned that the Ghola, the secret to their demise, was there. It had been Taraza's design all along. The Ghola had been bait. When Odrade boards the No ship, she comes to Teg. For quite some time now, she had known that he was her father. Looking at him now, she could see that something had been changed about him. Something was different. He tells her to take the ship to Chapter House, and that the Ghola must go with them too. They had to change Taraza's original design. He was no longer just bait for the destruction of the planet. They needed his talents. Teg tells Brismali that he will take over as Bashar. Odrade, Shiana, Duncan, Brismali, Lucilla, and a single worm escape the destruction of the planet Arrakis. The honored Matre Murbella is held prisoner. Waff and his face dancers die on the planet of the Prophet. Teg had sacrificed himself so that the others could escape. The honored Matres unleashed their obliterator weapons, scorching the surface of the planet Dune, killing all life on the surface. The planet of Muad'Dib, home of the Zinsuni Wanderers, where the God Emperor had ruled from for 4,000 years, was gone. On Chapter House, Odrade adjusts to Taraza's memories. She knew some in the Sisterhood would not like that she was the Mother Superior. Many in the Sisterhood still distrusted the Atreides. Their history had shown a hunger for power. She knew her position may be temporary. The Sisterhood had tested Shiana. She too was Atreides, descended from Siona and immune from prescience. The worm they had captured was nearing metamorphosis, and when the time came, they would bathe it in a mixture of melange and water, converting it into mini sand trout. They would release them onto Chapter House. They would create a second Dune. Taraza had wanted the destruction of Arrakis to eliminate almost all worms. According to her, they were an oracular force which held the universe in bondage. The worms containing a pearl of Leto's awareness magnified that grasp. He did not predict events, but instead he had created them. By the time the worms returned to their larger numbers, humankind would be far too numerous, doing too many different things. No single force could rule over all of their futures completely. But this was always his design. Murbella and the Ghola are being held inside of the No ship. Murbella is pregnant with Duncan's child. Duncan still insists that he will not serve the Sisterhood, telling Odrade that he will never be a stud for them. Duncan had realized some time ago that he had never fully trusted the witches, not even the Lady Jessica. Odrade promises to help Duncan in any ways that she can. When he asked why, she responds by saying this: "Because my ancestors loved you. Because my father loved you." Love. You witches can't feel love. She stared down at him for almost a minute. The bleached hair was growing out dark at the roots and curling once more into ringlets, especially at his neck, she saw. "I feel what I feel," she said. "And your water is ours, Duncan Idaho." Seeing the effect that these ancient Fremen words had had on Duncan, Odrade turns and leaves the room. She looks upon the worm they had captured.
the last pearl of Leto's awareness. They had freed him. Shiana would be trained as a Bene Gesserit sister, and eventually lead the project to breed new worms on Chapter House. Leto II, the God Emperor, the Tyrant, had helped the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood find their noble purpose. 10,000 years since Leto began his metamorphosis from human into the sandworm of Arrakis, and historians still argue over his motives. Was he driven by the desire for long life? He lived more than 10 times the normal span of 300 standard years. But consider the price he paid. Was it the lure of power? He is called the Tyrant for good reason. But what did power bring him that a human might want? Was he driven to save humankind from itself? We have only his words about his golden path to answer this, and I cannot accept the self-serving records of Dar es Balat. Might there have been other gratifications which only his experiences would illuminate? Without better evidence, the question is moot. We are reduced to saying only that he did it. The physical fact alone is undeniable. Next in this series, we will cover Chapter House Dune, the final book in Frank Herbert's original Dune saga. Chapter House picks up several years after the events of Heretics, as the Sisterhood awaits for young worms to rise out of the newly formed deserts of Chapter House. Duncan Idaho has visions of a mysterious man and woman who watch him from some other place. Consider supporting this channel on Patreon if you enjoyed the video, and please subscribe for more Dune videos, and check out the Dune playlist on this channel for more videos on the lore of the book series.